Yeah, so let's welcome Van Lindberg.
So one of the things that I can do that is really, really the best part of this entire thing is that I get to say thanks. So I'm going to begin by actually taking a survey about who's using a few different features in Python. And if you want to use one of these features, please raise your hand. Bisect, collections, decimal, func tools, heap queue, iter tools, JSON, math, queue, random, named tuple, enumerate, sets, the new conditional expressions, reverse iteration, ordered dicts. How about generator expressions? If you use any of these features, you need to thank Raymond Hedinger. Raymond is the originator, maintainer, or PEP author for each one of these features, and he's done an amazing amount more. He's been around the Python community for well over a decade, I believe about 12 years since his first post on Complang Python. He has 3,812 commits to the Python repository. He has 160 commits to the PEP repository, and 89,716 lines in the Python repository were either added or changed by him. He's also served as director of the Python Software Foundation and been a mentor to many, many people on the mailing list. So I am happy today. Raymond, come up here. The Distinguished Service Award is the highest award given by the Python Software Foundation. It signifies essentially a lifetime of work. And so, thank you, Raymond. I also get to highlight a couple other people. David, R. David Murray. Come up. Y'all are aware of the switch to Unicode in Python 3. Well, one of the places in which that gets the most hairy is in the email module. And David has spent the past several years untangling that because all of the email RFCs were written before Unicode, literally. And so it's a complete mishmash of understanding sometimes it's data, sometimes it's text, and going back and forth. And he's also been a longtime mentor for new contributors. He helps people on the core mentorship mailing list, on Python Dev, on the IRC channel. He's a Google Summer of Code mentor and been a big help onboarding Google Summer of Code and GNOME candidates. His patience is really unparalleled. And so I am happy to award the Community Service Award to R. David Murray. I also wanted to recognize Benjamin Peterson. Benjamin is in so many different places. Benjamin, are you here? He's probably fixing code. I don't know if you noticed that Fernando Perez said that he needed something. I think it was PEP 465 maybe, 3465. And Benjamin, a couple hours later, he did it. And he's the release manager for Python 2.7. He works on the 6 compatibility library, and he's fixed many, many bugs on the new python.org. He already received a Community Service Award in 2011, but we wanted to give him a special recognition for all the things that he's done. You know, there's actually one more award. I've been sort of talking about the code and people who have affected all of us through the code. But there's the other thing that all of us in this room share, and that is that we have been touched and affected by this person. This is the largest gathering of Python programmers that will take place in the world this year. And there are so many people to thank. Matthew, David, Yannick, Stuart, all of Montreal Python. But there's one, yes. There are literally too many to name. But there's one person who has put in literally the many, many hundreds of hours to chair PyCon this year, and that's Diana Clark. You know, it's amazing to have so many people who are willing to share and contribute in our community. You know, community, that's a really important word for us. 3 years ago, a couple of professors actually decided to study diversity, to study community, actually, the growth and development of various communities, and they found some indicators of growth and development and well-being and happiness. And they found various communities that had recorded history going back thousands of years, and some that had been isolated until relatively recently. And they studied these, and they decided to see what made these communities successful. So I want to share 3 things from their study. The key question in their research was, is it better to be more similar or more different? And they looked at a lot of different indications. I mentioned they looked at economic growth, they looked at well-being, they looked at migration patterns, they looked at the ability of other people to get there, they looked at records from other people visiting, and they looked at all these things, and they tried to figure out, is having more and different people a benefit, or is it something that it really holds you back? And what they found was really, really interesting. They found that when a community was very new, it was having people be very similar, be very homogeneous, was a huge asset. And the reason why is because when you were new, you didn't have to ask what your neighbor would think about something. You just knew, because you knew how your neighbor think, you knew how they would react. You were able to be aligned because everybody was alike. But here's the surprising part, that as society started to become more complex, through the Renaissance and especially through the Industrial Revolution, the value of similarity plummeted and the value of being different skyrocketed. It actually turned out that these communities that had a little bit of a head start earlier in basically agricultural times started to stagnate. And the ones that had these influences from all over had different viewpoints, different people, different values, different points of view. They started to really become successful along many different dimensions. So this is the first point. Diversity is a necessary response to complexity. Unless we are willing to accept many people with many different viewpoints into our community, we aren't going to have all the different inputs that we really need to grow. Second is that as they looked further into the data, they found that there was a rich get richer effect in many of these communities. some of them, as society advances, the communities that are relatively more diverse tend to attract more opportunities, they have more growth, and so that brings in new people and new ideas and new viewpoints, which sets off a virtuous cycle. But they also found that the communities that were relatively less diverse tended to have fewer people and fewer opportunities, and so people left, opportunities dried up, and they stagnated. This is the second point, is that diversity creates a virtuous cycle. If we are willing to reach out, we can outgrow and outthink and outcompete the people around us. Now, this is true in open source communities as well. Particularly, this is true in the Python community. When we first started out, it's true, we had a substantial group of people. We were very similar. But we had a couple people, and I'd like to especially highlight people like Lynn Root and Jessica McKellar, who have been we had these people who were dedicated to helping us reach out. And we've had about 5 years of effort. And since then, we've been on the path for greater growth and greater diversity. And you can see it in this hall. Reflected at this conference, we have people from 52 different nations across all inhabited 6 continents. But we see it even more in gender diversity. We don't ask for gender on our registration form, but we can do a little bit of machine learning on your names, and we can look at T-shirts. We can do some statistical sampling, and sometimes I can say that word, and sometimes I can't. And it appears to us from all the data that we have is not only do we have 1/3 women speakers, we have 1/3 women attendees. So I'm really excited about that number because the most recent survey from the Computing Research Association's graduation numbers indicated that only 12% of computer science graduates in the year 2011 to 2012 were women. That means that we are pulling more than our weight amongst various communities. We are winning. We are on that virtuous cycle. And so when I look out across this room, I see a community that is better prepared to meet the future and better prepared to win and compete than any other. But that brings me to the third point, and that is that diversity requires individualization. Diversity may be a necessary response to complexity, but diversity itself brings with it its own complexity. Think back to the professors in their study. When people are very similar, it's really easy for people to communicate, again, because they're all alike, because they're all aligned, because they're all alike. But when society starts to become more complex, the communities with greater diversity are able to prosper because they include people with different points of view and who think and value different things, who have different use cases and want a hugely different number to go in a hugely different number of directions. You can't predict what your neighbor's going to think anymore, though, so you need to take more time to communicate. In our own community, we need to think about this in terms of acceptance and individualization. Greater diversity means that we need to work harder to understand those around us and to be empathetic to the various places that they're coming from. You know, I was talking with a couple of attendees the other night, and one of them said, and this is quoting as close as I can, said, "I consider it much more important that I was raised in New York and had a liberal arts major before I started to code. Those things do much more to define me and who I am than the fact that I'm a woman." It was well said. We can't be lazy and treat people like they're one-dimensional along any line, be it race or gender or politics or culture or anything, because the value comes in understanding that we have many different viewpoints and are many different people. This is well reflected in the code of conduct for the PSF. I know we talked about this, the codes of conduct a little bit. Brett did on the first day. So many of you are familiar with the Zen of Python and how that has guided us in actually creating Pythonic code. But there is really a Zen of Python community, and I think that was the one that was written by Brian Curtin. You know, you can see it. My favorite quote from this conference so far came actually from Lawrence van Gutven, who said that just being at PyCon makes him more optimistic around the world. So the code of conduct, this Zen of Python community, says, and I'm going to read it to make sure I get it right. The Python community is made up of members from around the globe with a diverse set of skills, personalities, and experiences. It is through these differences that our community experiences great successes and continued growth. When you're working with members of the community, we encourage you to follow these guidelines, which help steer our interactions and strive to keep Python a positive, successful, and growing community. A member of the Python community is open. Members of the community are open to collaboration, whether it's on PEPs, patches, problems, or otherwise. We're receptive to constructive comment and criticism, as the experiences and skill sets of other members contribute to the whole of our efforts. We're accepting of all who wish to take part in our activities, fostering an environment where anyone can participate and everyone can make a difference. Considerate. Members of the community are considerate of their peers, other Python users. We're thoughtful when addressing the efforts of others, keeping in mind that oftentimes the labor was completed simply for the good of the community. We're attentive in our communications, whether in person or online, and we're tactful when approaching differing views. Finally, respectful. Members of the community are respectful. We're respectful of others, their positions, their skills, their commitments, and their efforts. We're respectful of the volunteer efforts that permeate the Python community. We're respectful of the processes set forth in the community, and we work within them. When we disagree, we are courteous in raising our issues. Overall, we are good to each other. We contribute to this community not because we have to, but because we want to. If we remember that, these guidelines will come naturally. You'll notice that the Python code of conduct, end quote, by the way, is about who we are and what we value here in the Python community. We recognize that we are different people with different experiences, and we explicitly value that. We reach out. But where does that leave the PSF? It's clear that as a community, we have turned toward the corner toward greater growth and greater diversity, and we're starting to reap the benefits of that. But I have to say that as an organization, the PSF hasn't kept up. So over the past year and a half, there have been many discussions and votes and a lot of work thinking about what defines us as an organization and how we can better reflect the worldwide Python community. And so I'm happy today to announce the culmination of that effort. So of those who are here now, how many are currently members of the PSF? If you could raise your hand. Okay, now of those who are here, how many are members of the Python community? Do you see the difference? That's completely unacceptable. Our community has become bigger and more diverse and stronger, and we as an organization weren't keeping up. That is why, as of today, the PSF is transitioning to an open membership model. Everybody who's in the Python community is welcome and encouraged to become a member of the PSF. In fact, if you go to thenewpython.org and you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a button that says Become a Member of the PSF. You fill out a form, you agree to the code of conduct. You say, I am a part of this community and I agree to these values. I will be kind, I will be respectful, I will be considerate. And you are a member of the PSF. We've also created a new structure called working groups where people can bring up the things that they are doing to help support others in the community. We don't have to think of all these ideas ourselves. And the PSF can, in a structured way, help you and recognize you. And those who are working and dedicating, whether it be in organization, whether it be in code, whether it be in documentation or tests or leadership or outreach, we want to support you. And those who are involved will have the opportunity to actually be eligible to vote and exercise a role in guiding where the PSF goes in the future. We've reworked the bylaws to be radically more inclusive and representative of the Python community as a whole. You know, this is one of the things that we're just starting on. This is a new direction that, frankly, no other community that I'm aware of has gone in, especially with regard to creating the way for us to elevate and empower and support individual efforts from across the Python community. So I ask you for your patience as we go forward, because we're going to have various places where we're going to have glitches and we're not always going to do it right. But from here on, I hope that I can, coming out of PyCon, I'd like every single one of you to be a member of the PSF. By the end of the year, I'd like to have 30,000 members of the PSF worldwide, or even more, because that is truly what the community is about. So we can support each other, we can empower each other, and we can truly be representative of this community in all its diversity. Thank you.